Hello world, it's Birdo-Prey5 Qapla, and welcome to my review of Star Trek Discovery, Season 3, Episode 8, Sanctuary. This really should have been called How Detmer Got Her Groove Back, because it was by far the most fun and interesting part of the episode. But it's towards the end, so we'll get there in a bit. The episode actually opens with Dr. Culber and Georgiou scene that was on the Ready Room. If you watched that, it was the sneak peek. Very cringy scene where Georgiou and Culber trade insults. I mean, Georgiou said, "I would poison your children if I had time." Like she doesn't know that Dr. Culber doesn't really have children. And Culber says, "If I had the time, I'd have children." Like, whatever, you know what? Whatever. It's so, then they go to a different medical bay, and the actual, and my apologies, last week, I called Dr. Culber the chief medical officer. I forgot the chief medical officer is actually some woman whose name I forget because we never see her in the show, but she's there this week. And so her and Culber put Georgiou under in this futuristic operation where they're going to do an atomic level scan of her body. Culber says, yes, 930 years in the future, they do an atomic level. They have to see what's going on in an atomic level, and then they can find a cure. Obviously, that makes no sense. The atomic level has nothing to do with your health. Your atoms aren't sick, okay? Your atoms aren't in distress. It's your organs, your molecules, okay? The parts of your blood. That's what's in distress. There's no reason an atomic level scan would be of any use in the medical field. But they're going to use atomic level 930-year advancement to find of a cure. All of a sudden, Michael Burnham shows up in the office because she got called there or whatever. She's there for Georgiou. And Michael literally says, "We're going to figure this out. I'm not leaving until we do." "7 seconds. Michael then says, how about I check back in later," and leaves. "We're done. I'm not leaving until we find out what's wrong with you." 7 seconds later, why don't I check back in later? 7 seconds. They couldn't go 7 seconds without forgetting what they just had the character say. Why have her say it if she's not going to stay? What the hell was the point of the dialogue? 7 seconds. I think this is a new record for Star Trek Discovery in breaking their own canon and breaking what they're going to say. They just said what they're going to do, and then 7 seconds later, done. We forgot what we said. So Michael finds Book, and Book says, "I got to go home to Kyheem, or whatever the planet is called, Qapla. His brother Kahim needs him. It's the first time his brother's reached out to him in 15 years. It's got to be bad." So they go to Admiral Vance of Vance Refrigeration, and they're like, "Listen, I got to go home." And Michael says, "You can't go home. You can't. How are you going to get home?" She's like, "It's 2 weeks away at maximum warp," which is actually pretty damn close, surprisingly. But then she says, "And there's only a 50% chance of surviving if you go through a transwarp tunnel." Why? We saw Book's ship go through transwarp when we first saw him. Now he can't go through transwarp. It's a 50% survival rate, less than 50%. We don't have any reason as to why that's true. We're not given any explanation, but it does mean that transwarp was probably out of the question a few weeks ago when we're like, "Hey, how did Book's ship make it to that salvage planet so quickly?" And everybody in the comments like, "Well, they have transwarp. Well, you know what? Michael just said they didn't use transwarp. So how did Book ship make it to the salvage planet so quickly? Unless the salvage planet is literally next to the Federation. But whatever, those are old things. We're looking forward to a better future. So I will try not to bring up the mistakes that they've cemented themselves into. So they go to talk to Admiral Vance, and Vance is like, no way, no how, I'm not risking Discovery to go to, the Emerald Chain has been doing this to 50 other planets, and I can't risk war. We can't go to war with the Emerald Chain. I can't risk Discovery's spore drive. Absolutely no way. 2 seconds later, after a few, like a line or two from Saru, he's like, oh, we'll just go as observers. And then Admiral Vance is like, okay, you go as observers, but the first sign of trouble, you jump out of there, which of course we all know is not going to happen. So then we go back to the salvage planet where Tolor, and we finally meet the great Osyraa. The great Osyraa, the great and powerful Osyraa, the aunt of Tolar. And Tolar's telling him what happened, telling her what happened, about all of his all of his workers running off. And she's like, I felt, I took you in as a kid because I had mixed feelings about your father's death. We find out she killed the father. He's like, I always knew you had to kill him. It was okay. You kept the mercantile exchanges. It sounded like a Ferengi talking. Anyway, Osira decides to kill Tolar by feeding him to a transworm, which of course just looks like a giant penis. And she's like, oh, don't worry, it won't hurt. That's why it's called a transworm. They put you in a trance. Next thing you know, the worm is biting him and he's screaming and his legs are falling off. So transworms are man-eating worms that we then later, we know from previous episodes that the Orions and other species eat the transworms. So would you really be comfortable eating a food that ate people? That seems like a very weird delicacy. Whatever. So then we get a scene where Tilly is playing first officer, and she is the acting first officer, right from ensign to first officer last week. And so they're having what seems to be a legit meeting in a hallway and going over Saru's schedule, because kind of like she's the secretary of the captain. I don't think that's how XO is supposed to work. One of the most important things, of course, is where's the burn data? We don't get that till a little later in the conversation. The pretty important thing of the Andorian Rin being on the ship. Saru's like, yeah, let's schedule that for later. And then he about Linus. What's up with Linus? Until he's like, yeah, well, Linus has been ordered back to his quarters and ordered out of the mess hall and not to return to the mess hall until he stops shedding. And then, so then Saru's like, what about our ongoing matter? And Tilly's like, yeah, I've narrowed it down to hit it, execute, and manifest. And you find out they're talking about that's going to be, what is Saru going to say every time they want to, go to warp or something. Pike said hit it. Captain Picard obviously said engage. And so Saru's got to find something. He's not happy with hit it because that was Pike's thing. Tilly's like, you can put your own spin on it. And he's like, manifest, what the F is with manifest? So he's like, yeah, that's the worst one. I'll erase that. And then after all this BS and all this other talking, Tilly's like, oh, by the way, Stamets wants to see you. I think he found something from all that burn data that, was the entire point of the last episode. And the most important mission the Discovery has had is to find out where the burn happened. And it's the very last thing Tilly tells him about. But it just so happens to work out because that seemed to be where they were walking to. They walked to engineering. And he has to push a button to open the door For the first time in Star Trek history, you can't just walk to a door and it opens. For whatever reason, they decided Saru has to push a button to open a door to engineering, and they walk in, and wouldn't you know it, Stamets and Adira and some other random people were all just standing there waiting for Saru to enter, as if they knew he was on his way there the entire time. But Tilly didn't tell them about it till the very end of their hallway conversation. It was all very convenient. It was all very convenient. So it turns out that they found the source. They found the source of the burn, and it's some nebula, the Verubin Nebula. That's the source. The problem with this is that the Vulcans should have been able to figure this out. The Vulcans had hundreds of points of data from all the SB-19 probes or satellites or whatever the F they were. They didn't need 3 or 4 extra pieces of data that Michael Burnham's black boxes brought back that was really useless. But they combined them all and they could find the source of the burn where the Vulcans and Romulans with hundreds of data points could not. Makes no sense. So this nebula, it's weird. It's got a lot of electromagnetic radiation, and but there's audio signal, audio waves, waves in the frequency of audio coming out. They're not sound. They're moving. They're light waves. They're moving at the speed of light, but they're at a frequency that they can be converted to sound. And so they did, and it sounded like music to them. And if they clean it up, it's the music, that melody that Michael Burnham heard before. That was, and Tilly's like, where did I hear this before? Tilly, you haven't heard this before. But for some reason, Stamets is like, oh, it's the music the Barzans were playing on the Seed ship. Stamets wasn't there, but I guess Michael debriefed them or briefed them or whatever. So they knew to be on lookout for this melody. So yeah, that's the melody. It's coming from this nebula. And then Saru, using his superior Kelpian hearing, which is a new thing. He always had superior eyesight. Now he's got hearing. And he's like, hey, narrow it down to just this signal. And they do. And what do they hear? It's a Federation distress signal. There's a Federation ship stuck in the nebula. It could have been probably the cause of the burn. Isn't this the most important thing right now, that there's a Federation distress signal coming from the source of the burn? No, we've got bigger fish to fry. We've got to go to Kaiju for whatever reason, or Kaiwan, or Kwejian. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of his planet. It starts with a K. Because Book's brother, called for him after 15 years. So they black alert it to Kaiwan. Where is it? Qwajian. They black alert it to Qwajian, and they can sense as soon as they get there that there's a heavy cruiser 30 minutes out at high warp. And we find the heavy cruiser, we saw it earlier. It looks like something out of the mind of George Lucas. I mean, it is out of Star Wars, if I've ever seen it. This is Osiris ship. Okay, so Osiris ship is inbound. It's 30 minutes out. And they gives enough time for Michael and Book to beam down. Of course, Saru says at the very instant anything goes wrong, you're ordered to beam back up. But then they go down there and there's this planetary defense shield that just covers the sanctuary area. And of course, you can't beam through it and you can't communicate through it. So we know what's going to happen. We know what's going to happen. Oh, excuse me. Before this happens, I almost forgot. I almost forgot the most stunning and brave part of this episode. Oh my, how would I have forgiven myself if I had forgotten to tell you this? So there's this distress signal. They're not going to it yet because they haven't decoded what the distress signal is saying. It's a distress signal. Just go to the fucking signal. They're in distress. What more fucking information do you need? It is a distress signal. Oh, but they're like, let's decode it. And Stamets is like, hey, you know who can decode it really fast? Adira. She's great at this stuff. She can decode it in just a few hours. Meanwhile, Adira's standing there. It's like all of a sudden she can't speak for herself, and Saru won't speak to her directly. I mean, what? All of a sudden, Stamets has to speak for Adira. It makes absolutely no sense. This whole scene made no sense until we get the line. Saru leaves. It's just Stamets and Adira finally says it. She finally says it. She says, it's they're great. And he's like, what are you talking about? She's like, you said she. I'm they. Yes, this is it. We were told she was non-binary. For 8 episodes, they've been using the pronouns. 6 episodes. They've been using the pronouns she and her. And now we are in episode 8, and she finally has to tell Stamets, this whole time you've been calling me she, her. I've never felt like a she or a her. I'm a they and a them. And Stamets is like, that's so beautiful. Oh my God. And she's like, I never told anyone but Gray before. So she is so loved by the Discovery crew that she could tell the secret that she's only ever told her boyfriend, her one true love, the true love of a 15-year-old. That's all she could ever share, this deep secret. The secret is that she's not she, but them. Fine. I don't care. I don't care. She's them, they. Stamets is so proud of her. He's so proud of her. So proud that he's the first one she trusts. That I guess he broadcasts it to the whole effing ship, because after this point, anyone who talks to her magically knows what pronoun she wants. They use they, them, their. And it doesn't really happen again until the end of the episode. But Dr. Kohlberg comes in. He's the first one to start addressing her by they, them, except other than Stamets. And they purposely make the scene so long, it is cringy, that how many times they insert they, them, their into this scene. And every time they say it, I'm thinking they're referring to the fact that she's a trill and has multiple entities inside her. Because she's the one character where they, them kind of makes a little sense. Because it's not just her. It's her and Gray and all the other previous hosts kind of working through her. It's so weird to refer to a single person as they. And I've been using it for they. I've used it for they even before, we've been awakened to the transgender community as a whole. I used it incorrectly, as I was told in elementary school from time to time, not supposed to refer to a single person as they, but it just sounded right at the time. In my writing, I gotta say, in their writing, in this episode, it sounds so cringe. Okay, this episode should be renamed How Detmer Gets Her Groove Back. But Star Trek Discovery should just be renamed to Star Trek Cringe, because it is full of cringe dialogue, cringe jokes, and cringe situations. It's all cringe. It is just so much cringe. It's hard to deal with. So we go back. So yeah, don't call her she anymore. It's they, them from now on. Okay, fine. So then we learn about Kahim, who is Book's brother. And apparently Kahim started hunting those trans worms for the emerald chain. And now we find out why. Okay, here's the plight of Kwejian. Here's the problem. Okay, 15 years ago, okay, no, excuse me. 120 years ago, when the burn happened, somehow, because of the disruption in subspace from the burn, which this is the first time we heard about any type of subspace disruption from the burn, but the burn was what caused the dilithium to explode, but apparently it caused some disruption in subspace, and somehow a disruption in subspace caused the moon of the planet to change its orbit. How? I don't know. But their moon changed orbit, and it caused all their sea locusts to come out of the ocean and start going onto land, eating their crops. And then they started eating their crops, their people started starving, and the planet used to be so beautiful. And now they've got these plagues and plagues of sea locusts. So what did they do? Did they use all their combined psionic forces to ask the sea locusts to go back to the ocean? No, because there was just too many of them. So instead, and this timeline doesn't make a lot of sense, is that then 15 years ago, they started dealing with the Emerald Chain with Osyraa, and Osyraa promised them a natural repellent. They didn't want to use poison. They didn't want to use poison to kill these locusts. It had to be natural. So Osyraa was giving them some type of natural repellent so they didn't have to kill these millions of sea locusts, because that would be morally objectionable to them. Okay, listen, it would be morally objectionable to kill millions or billions of sea insects. And they're blue and glowy and pretty, but there's like bajillions of them. It would be too morally objectionable to kill the insects with pesticides. So instead, we're going to trade the Orion, the Emerald, Orion, whatever the hell, Andorian, Orion, Emerald Chain Syndicate. We're going to trade them our trans worms for natural bug repellent. And what's going to happen to these trans worms we're giving them? They're going to be eaten. So they are giving away an endangered species to be eaten to save themselves the moral trouble of having to use a little insect repellent to save the crops and save millions of people. How do they justify giving away worms that are an endangered species to be eaten, okay, to be killed, giant worms to be killed, when they won't kill a little sea locust to save their own crops? This is just awful writing. So Kahim started, once he started hunting trans worms for the chain, Book wanted nothing to do with him. And we also find out that Book has a real name. His real name is Tarakis. But he's like, I don't go by that name anymore. Never since my father and my grandfather started working for the chain, for the Emerald Chain, he gave up that. So Book has been the one restoring balance, bringing the trans worms back to a sanctuary planet, not this planet. They haven't been to Kwejian before, so he's moving the trans worms to a different planet, basically so his brother can't get his hands on them and sell them to Osyraa in exchange for the repellent that was saving his people's lives. Also, throughout this whole episode, everybody who hears about the Federation starts talking about how the Federation is so deceitful. The Federation always asks for, their help never comes without strings. And like even at the end of the episode, the Andorian who had the antennas cut off, Rin, he's like, the way you scare Andorian children is by telling them they're going to go to Federation summer camp. and Tilly's like, that's not a thing. So for whatever reason, it's been pointed out again and again and again that the Federation is basically evil. And everybody knows it, and nobody's asking questions. Okay? Nobody's asking questions. And, why is everybody we talk to about this Federation think they're evil? Nobody's asking. They'll just figure that out at some point, I'm sure. So Osira's ship gets there, and Osyraa, hails Discovery, and she scanned them first. They're like, they asked, do you want to put up shields, Captain? No. Saru's like, no, don't go to shields. Don't go to your yellow alert. Nothing that could upset them. We're just diplomats here. We're just observing. So Osyraa hails Discovery. She's like, I want Rin. Give me Rin. And Saru's like, he's done nothing wrong. No organization we recognize has asked for his, extradition. And she's like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? She's like, he's a criminal. Give him over. And Saru's like, no, he's here under protection 4909 subsection what? And she's like, I don't know where you think you are, bitch, but I want Rin. If you don't get me Rin, I'm going to start killing everybody on the planet. Oh, no, excuse me. I'm going to start attacking the planet. And Saru holds firm. No, I'm not giving you Rin. So then she gives the most ridiculous threat I've ever heard given by a bad guy or girl, or woman. She says, and I quote, I will burn 10. Oh no, I'm sorry. That comes a little later. I apologize. That's a threat she gives to Book's brother. So we'll wait till we get there. So while this whole fight thing and is going on the bridge between Osyraa and whatnot, Stamets and Adira just happen to walk into or find themselves in the ship's concert hall. And Adira is holding the cello. And Stamets happens to be sitting at a grand piano. And they're like, well, we're here. Let's just play music. Why? If we're... The whole point of having a non-binary character, transgender characters, gay characters, okay, it's to normalize it. And I get it. And it's fine. I get it. In fact, I'd say in 2020, we have pretty much normalized gay characters. There's no big, oh my God, they're gay. Oh, no. Okay. Ever since that kissing Dak scene on DS9, nobody bats an eye anymore. Okay. But wouldn't it make sense if you're trying to normalize this, that these are just normal people and like everybody else and they exist and okay, wouldn't it make sense to make your non-binary character bond with anybody else but your gay character? I mean, she could have bonded with Michael. She could have bonded with Tilly. She could have bonded with Saru. She could have bonded with Oko or Ono or whatever the hell her name is, or Detmer. Anybody else on the ship. She could have bonded with Linus. Literally anyone else on the ship. But she chooses to bond with Stamets. And there's nothing wrong with it. He's another person. It just feels weird. Like, why do the it's like they're not being forced. They're not being segregated, but they're choosing to segregate. That the non-binary and the transgender, who are the same character now, because she can only see her transgender boyfriend as a ghost. Although she can't. She admits to Stamets in this episode, Gray stopped talking to her. The Shadow's like, oh, maybe Gray just needs some time. But they all have to bond together. It just doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense. Michael asks, you know, she's like, I didn't even know you had a brother. To Book, he's like, oh, he's like, what about the rest of your family? He's like, well, you already met Grudge. Okay, Grudge is his family. I thought Grudge was a queen, so maybe Grudge is his mother. I don't know. I have no idea. Grudge is a queen. It's also his family. Okay. So they go down to the planet, and they get promptly taken prisoner by Book's brother. And Book knew, like, he at one point, like, Michael, just put your hands up. And then all these people step out behind trees. And, of course, the lead guy is Book's brother, Kahim. And they take him. And so basically, he says, listen, I needed to bring you here because Osyraa wanted you. Osyraa wants Rin. Okay, so just turn Rin over, and then Osyraa will give us what we need to keep the locusts away, and everybody will be happy. And Book is like, I can't turn Rin over. I'm not going to send somebody back to slavery. He's like, if you don't do it, she's going to kill us. She's going to kill you. Book's like, ah. So then the brother is just in his beautiful home, his giant, beautiful home for a planet that's been in distress for 15 years. He's living a life of luxury. And so he calls, so then he gets a phone call. This is just after she stopped talking to Discovery when Saru refused to hand Rin over. She told Saru that the people on the planet are going to pay the price for Saru's insolence. She didn't say insolence, but for Saru's not helping. So then she makes a phone call down to Kahim. It's a hologram call. And so she's like, I need Rin. They're not playing nice. So without Rin, I'm going to need your brother and whoever he came with, which means Michael. So he's like, what are you going to do with them? She's like, how dare you question me? And Kahim is not for as bad a guy he is, Kahim doesn't want to hand over his brother. And this is where we get the most ridiculous threat ever made by a bad guy, villain, bad woman, whatever. Osira says, as a threat, I will burn 10 hectare-acres of forest every minute until you turn them over. So, of course, as an American, I'm like, what the fuck is a hectare-acre? I mean, I've heard the term, but I never really knew what it was. I know what an acre is, okay? I know what an acre is. It's not that big. If a hectare-acre is anything like an acre, it's not really that much of a threat. So I Googled what's a hectare-acre, and of course, a hectare-acre is a metric acre, and it's 2.47 acres. So for us Americans, she's threatening to burn 25 acres of forest every minute. 25 acres. Listen, I mean, if you live in the city, 25 acres is a park, okay? But if you live in the country, you know, you've probably got 20 acres, and that's just you, okay? Forest fires that burn every year burn millions and millions of acres, okay? And that's just one forest fire. The threat of burning 25 acres a minute, it's just ridiculous. I mean, why even waste a torpedo with such a small yield that would only take out 25 acres? But then the thing is, she can't even do that. She can't even burn 1 acre of forest because they have a shield. So she's shooting a bunch of photon torpedoes, and she can't even penetrate their shield. Okay. So they're down on the ground. They're like, oh shit, this is all happening. So on Discovery, Saru is like, well, we can't let them do this. Arm phasers and Reese, I believe it's Reese up there. He's like, but the Admiral said don't attack. And Saru's like, I know what he said, but we have to follow Starfleet protocol. We can't let innocent people die. And I was like, I don't think that's Starfleet protocol, Saru. And then Tilly has the great idea. He's like, what if we didn't fire from Discovery? And she's like, what if we fired from a different ship, a non-Federation ship? And Saru looks at her. She's like, yeah, a non-Federation ship flown by a pilot who went rogue and will be severely disciplined. And they look at Detmer, and they run to Book's ship in the shuttle bay. And Detmer and Rin, because Rin says, oh, I'll tell you. They want to know. Earlier, Saru's like, Rin, we have to know first. Right. Saru put off this meeting with Rin. He should have been like the most important person on the ship. He put the meeting off. Rin finally comes barging in to Saru and Tilly. Is like, hey, you guys got to talk to me. I got to know what's going on. And Saru is still like, wasn't our meeting scheduled for later? I was like, yeah, Saru, maybe you should have scheduled that before Osyraa got here. So he first learns that Osira's on the way. So then Saru's like, we got to know what's so important. Why does Osyraa want you? And Rin is like, I can't tell you. I can't tell you. He says, but I can tell you how to damage her ship, because he knows all the weak points of her ship. But so then he goes with Detmer to Book's ship, and they start flying. And Detmer is hesitant at first, but through this is where she gets her groove back after 4 or 5 passes of attacking. And this is straight out of Star Wars. Book's tiny ship is flying around this giant ship of Osira's, taking out the laser turrets and whatnot. It's ridiculous. But she's having fun. It's a fun scene. It is. It feels like Star Wars. And she's flying and she's blasting blasters. And like, you know, they can't get a target lock on her, I guess, because she's too quick and she's too close. And Rin is like, yeah, fire here, fire there, blah, 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 blah. And then Grudge jumps up on Rin. And Rin's like, oh my God, what the hell is this? And she's like, don't worry, it's just a cat. He's like, a cat? What's that, like a pet? So there's a little bit of a funny scene there. And I know it doesn't sound funny, and nothing in this episode was that funny, but that was the funniest part. Trust me. Unfortunately, that was the funniest part. So she's fine. Then she's like, you know what? We still got to attack more. And Rin's like, no, we can't take any more hits. She's like, oh, we can do it. She's like, I'm going to full manual control. That's how I learned to fly. And manual controls pop up, and she's like, boo, boo, boo. And now this is where she gets her groove back. And she's manual flying all around, just shooting the shit out of Osiris's ship, to the point that Osyraa eventually warps away. But not before Book looks up from the planet and sees Osira's ship. Now, they are in high orbit, okay? They are well above the planet. Even Osira's large ship shouldn't be visible by the naked eye in the daylight. But fine, if Osira's ship is maybe this little silver speck in the sky, there is absolutely no way a ship the size of Book should be visible. Not only is it visible, not only from the surface of the planet can Book identify his ship in the sky. He's like, is that my ship? But you can hear the explosions. They are in the vacuum of space, and you can hear the explosions of the ships firing on each other from the surface. It is beyond ridiculous. So she gets her groove back. After this, she's all macho again, and she's happy. So her PTSD storyline has come to an end. She doesn't need training wheels anymore. Oh yeah, they put training wheels on her Discovery control panel at the beginning of the episode because she needed safeguards. So now she's all back to her normal self, and that's great. I am happy for her. Meanwhile, they took Georgiou in for this super, this more important testing that they had to do. They were going to break her down on the atomic level. And while they were doing the scan, that's when she started looking like proto-matter or something was coming out of her. They don't think she's a hologram or proto-matter. They still think it's Georgiou. That proto-matter was probably what was being used to scan her. That's probably why it looked like that. And they could only do an 82% atomic scan. And she wakes up and she's like screaming. And there's like the doctor's like she's going to have a cerebral hemorrhage and all this stuff. And Colbert's like, no, we could just push it a little longer. And the chief medical officer is like, her heart rate's too high. And then thankfully she wakes up before she dies. She screams. Meanwhile, we're seeing she's having more flashbacks to the mirror universe, to her killing someone named San, S-A-N, not her son. The name is San. Again, it's San. This is somebody she kills in the mirror universe. I heard in my comments that if you read the Discovery book that came, the character book, a physical thing you read with words, the Discovery book, that you know about San from that. Obviously, I'm not reading the book, so we'll just have to take what they give us. So she's still having this flashback of her killing San. In the mirror universe, it's what woke her up. And so she decides she's going to finish the scan on her own. She steals one of these things they put on her head. Then she goes to a terminal to finish the scan. And Dr. Colbert finds where she was. She hears that the Discovery is going to red alert. And she's like, oh, Michael. She's like, she gets worried about Michael. She's got to go save Michael. She turns around to go beam down, I guess, to save Michael. And Dr. Colbert is right behind her. He's like, I know where you're going. And he's like, and you were a liability to Michael last time you helped her. So we've got to go, we've got to go back to medical. So he stops her from going to help Michael. So basically, Osyraa is like, before she leaves away, before she warps out, she contacts Discovery, and she's like, you've just brought war. You got war with us now. She's like, I know. She didn't buy any bullshit about it not being a Federation ship. She knew damn well what happened. The whole thing at not being a Federation ship wasn't to convince Osyraa not to go to war with the Federation. It was so when they go back and tell the Admiral that it's Detmer who they're going to have to tell the Admiral that Detmer went rogue. So this is another ship with another officer going rogue. If I was Admiral Vance and they came back to me with this story, I would not only suspend the entire Discovery crew, I'd probably throw them all out of Starfleet and just take the ship apart or give it a new crew. Every week somebody else is going rogue. This was a ridiculously stupid idea. It's like they're just trying to find ways to undermine the Federation. I hope we see Vance in next week's episode, and he's not crazy screaming at them. So I assume he just buys the story. Whatever. So Osira's like, yeah, well, now we're going to have war. And she warps away. Kahim, meanwhile, is pissed. Without Osira's help, the sea locusts are still eating the food. And the brother's like, my son is going to die now. And Book's like, oh, you have a son? I didn't know. And Michael's like, why can't you guys, you're both empaths. Why can't you both ask the sea, I want to call them sea lice. They're not lice, they're locusts. Sea locusts to go back to the sea. And they're like, we can't, we're not powerful enough. We've tried, there's too many of them. And Michael's like, oh, who said just you guys? And she beams up to Discovery, and with the power of science of Discovery, they amplify their signal, their empath signal, and they reaffirm they can't tell them to go back to sea. They can only ask them to go back to the sea. So the two brothers start chanting and holding hands, and using the power of empathy, they ask the sea locust to return to the sea. Why do animals leave one habitat for another? They leave a habitat for another not because they want to go fucking sightseeing. They move it because food. If they left the sea, it means there's no more food in the sea. So they need to eat on land. So they're asking them to go back to sea to die. There is no logical reason these animals would have left the sea otherwise. So to tell them that you're just asking them to go back to the sea is the biggest bullcrap writing I've heard in a while. And again, this is Discovery, so it's par for the course. So they ask them to go back to the sea, and they do. They do. In 2 minutes, the Discovery and Michael Burnham saves his planet that he says their best scientists have been working 15 years on a solution for this. Their best scientists have been working 15 years on a solution, and Michael Burnham and the Discovery solve it in 2 minutes. And with the power of empathy, the brothers tell all the locusts to go back to the ocean, and everybody is safe on Qapla, or whatever the fuck the planet is called. Meanwhile, throughout the episode, Saru is trying different words, like it's not engage, but so he tried to hit it, it didn't work out. He tried execute, people were a little weirded out by it. But then Reese is like, shall I execute this command, Captain? And like they're looking at each other like, eh. And he's like, carry on. I hope carry on is not Saru's tagline, because carry on does not mean execute. Okay, they're not synonyms. Carry on does not mean hit it. It does not mean engage. Carry on just means carry on with what you're doing. So then we have a scene with Detmer and Owo in the mess hall, and they're talking about how macho Detmer is, and she was telling the story of what she did and how awesome it was and how helpful. She mentions Rin and Grudge in the same line, and they're all the whole bridge crew is there laughing, and it's great to see Detmer back to her old self, even though we never saw her as her old self before. But good to have a big macho pilot back. And meanwhile, Rin is sitting in the corner alone, and Tilly comes over to talk to him. And he's like, I get as much mention as the cat. And Tilly's like, don't be silly, you're a hero. And so Rin decides to let Tilly in on his big secret. The secret he wouldn't tell Saru, half hour ago. He's like, I know something. And that's why Osyraa wants me so bad. He's like, but I'm going to tell you, you're the first person. You're the only person who knows this besides me. I'm the only person in the galaxy who knows this. And I'm going to pass my secret on to you, Tilly, because you're going to need help next time when Osyraa comes back. It's not going to be so easy. And Tilly's like, we're pretty tough. He's like, the secret is the emerald chain. I can't. The emerald chain. They're running out of dilithium. Oh my God, they're running out of dilithium. That's the secret. The whole fucking galaxy is running out of dilithium. It's running out of dilithium. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry. The whole fucking galaxy is running out of dilithium. That's the secret. That's the big secret. They want to kill Rin because he knows the emerald chain is running out of dilithium. Oh my God. He's the only person who knows. I mean, besides Osyraa and everybody in the emerald chain and all the engineers on all their ships, He's the only person who knows. My fucking God. So then Kahim beams up to so yeah, they saved the planet. Kahim and Book reunite, and now they're all brotherly. Kahim beams up to Discovery to get a tour, because let's give a tour of our super secret, super technical starship to an otherwise pre-warp civilization. And they were called a pre-warp civilization earlier in the episode by Admiral Vance, even though Book has a ship. I guess they were pre-warp before they got warp. I don't know. So they give him a tour of Discovery, and Linus is there, and he's shedding skin, and Kahim's son is there, and Book and Kahim need some time alone. So Michael Burnham takes the kid. I think his name is Lido, and I don't even know what his name is. And she's like, "You want to come do something fun?" And he's like, "Peel skin off Linus's face." She's like, "Yes, that's right. Let's go peel skin off Linus's face." He's like, "Cool." And they go to take him to go see Linus so he can peel skin off their face. And so Book and Kahim make up, and Book's like, "You did a great job. You kept the planet together for 15 years. Earlier in this episode, you were saying he was doing terrible things. He was hunting these worms and shit." What the fuck is this? Oh, it started an episode of Picard because I was talking too long. He's like, you just said your brother was a terrible person, that you had to break away from the family because he was trading in trans worms, and now you're giving him all the praise because he kept everything together for 15 years. Like, is there a government on this planet? Is the brother in charge of the entire planet? They said there were millions of people at stake, but we've only seen like 6 people on this entire planet. Is there a government? Who runs the sanctuary? Where is their military? I don't know. These questions that don't have answers. These questions that don't have answers. They do that final scene. I talked about it earlier, but Kober and Adira have the scene where she's still trying to. They are still trying to decode the distress signal. The distress signal, to find out what the distress signal says before, I guess, they go search for the ship that's in distress. And Adira fell asleep at the controls, at the computer. So Stamets very chivalrously puts his jacket over them. I was going to say her. But over them, which was real cringe and creepy. It's like, what? Is it not warm enough on a ship? Is it cold at night on the ship? Why does he have to put his jacket over them? They have this biggest cringe fest dialogue, and then they do a little kissy Kober and Stamets, and that scene ends, and then we get the final scenes of the episode where Book and Michael are on Book's ship, and he's like, "I think this thing took a dozen photon torpedoes," and Michael says, "it was only 8," and she's like, "I better start fixing your ship," and oh yeah. Book says he wants to sign up. He's like, "Sign me up for," he doesn't say sign me up for Starfleet. He says he wants in. And Michael's like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah, no, I want in. What you guys are doing, this is good stuff. I want to be a part of it." And, Laris and Siobhan, or whatever, I forget it. He's like, "I want to be a part of it. Sign me up." And so Michael's so happy. He's like, "Well, you got to talk to Saru." But that's it. So the end of this episode, Book wants to sign up for Starfleet. Michael looks happy. And she gets to fixing his ship. Next week on Discovery, do they go to the distress signal? No, if they do, they didn't show that. Next week on Discovery, apparently they go to some type of ice planet, or a planet, and they beam down to an icy part, and Georgiou has to make a trek through the snow to somewhere. And she tells Michael this is her only chance. So I hope they finally say, let's go to the source of the burn. Let's go see what that Federation starship in distress needs. You know, I mean, I would think that would be their most important mission. But no, they're going to go back to Federation headquarters. They're going to find, oh, Georgiou, they know, they find out that the guy who debriefed Georgiou, he's back next week. And the doctor's like, you knew this was going to happen to her and you didn't tell us. So obviously, I'm guessing that he knew that since the mirror universe pulled away, that she's going to destabilize or something. And her only hope, I'm guessing, is she has to go back in time and she's going to go to find the Guardian of Forever. And we're going to see the Guardian of Forever is now in a frozen wasteland for reasons. And that's what she's looking for. I don't know. That's just my educated guess. We'll see what happens. But oh my God, this episode of Discovery. It was actually, okay, the Detmer redemption arc was fun. It was cool. There was great space battle. Not Star Trek. It was Star Wars space battle. Didn't feel anything like a Star Trek space battle. But it was a good Star Wars space battle. I mean, you had the laser turret. They had laser turrets. Turrets for Carlo. Turrets. Laser turrets. And yeah, I mean, that was cool. But the dialogue, the science, it just so cringe. So cringe being able to see your ship from a little ship that fits in the shuttle bay. Being able to see it from the ground. That doesn't. Again, this was an episode I was actually going to give it maybe a 6 until I started talking about it. And the fact that Rin's big secret is they're running out of dilithium. Oh my God. Oh my God. Actually, as Discovery episodes go this season, it wasn't a terrible episode for the season curve. But as reality goes, this is again just another shitty episode. Now, on the plus side, Michael Burnham wasn't saved the day. It wasn't 5 times this episode did Michael Burnham save the day. In fact, I think it was really only once or twice she saved the day. So that's not so bad. I'm going to give this episode a 3 out of 10. Mostly for the Detmer story arc. Everything else, oh my God, it just cringe. My voice has stopped. I can hear my voice has already gone out because I was screaming so loud. Maybe I should do less. We'll do 3 out of 10 for Sanctuary for Star Trek cringe. Guys, if you've enjoyed this, please remember to comment, like, subscribe. Check out my other channel, Birdo Prey 5X. Hit that bell icon so you get notifications. And I hope to see you again. Please subscribe. Most people who watch these videos aren't subscribers, but you watch anyway. And I thank you for it. But we YouTubers, we like to see that subscribe number go up. It makes us feel better. So please, if you can, I'd appreciate it. Qapla all. Bird out.